Hey folks, Steve here with a very special video for you today. We are kicking off Baptism by Fire, an entry in the BCS system. Having come off a recent convention where we played Panzer's Last Stand once again, um, I can't help but find myself caught up in my enjoyment of the BCS system and just how great it is. So I've done maybe less well played game of Panzer's Last Stand a year ago at a convention, and then we were playing that again this year. And I can say I performed much better, much greater mastery of the system because I had right before this past convention played through AeroCore. So coming back from the convention, I still have BCS on the mind. It's all very fresh, and well, by golly, I feel like I want to play just a little bit more. And Baptism by Fire happens to be a really good choice for this. So, this is the Battle of Kasserine, February 1943. So, a little bit earlier than some of the games that I've played recently, and is a very different change of pace in terms of the geography. So, we're fighting in North Africa, we're fighting in Tunisia, essentially, and the terrain will be very, very different, and the capabilities of the forces on the board are going to be very, very different. I picked this game because I happen to have, uh, I happen to have it. First of all, right? I can't play a game I don't have. I guess not nothing special to say there. But the full campaign, right? And like any BCS game, there are scenarios within the game. The full campaign is only about 10 turns. Um, and the number of formations that are actually involved is not particularly high either. So maybe in the same weight in terms of a number of forces as AeroCorps or pretty close to it. And not many start on the map at the beginning of the campaign. So it's a really nice kind of switch into something lighter than Panzer's Last Stand. Not too different in terms of scope or weight from AeroCorps, but there are some differences there that we'll need to watch out for. So let me remove this and get a better look at the map. So absolutely, yes, we are dealing with desert. We are dealing with some mountains. Um, and I've got everything set up to start the campaign. I'm going to have to pan around the camera a little bit to get the full breadth of everything that we're going to be seeing. I have on the turn track all the reinforcements. You can see there's quite a bit there stacked up that will enter the game over time. And there's going to always be a little bit of a glare over here. I apologize for that, but that's the plexi, and I got to do plexi here, guys. So that's what we're going to have to deal with. Um, Here are the things that we do need to consider. One, this before AeroCore came out, this probably would have been the BCS game that you would recommend to people to start with because, again, it is the lighter game of the early BCS games that came out after last Blitzkrieg. For our purposes, it's two maps put together here. So I have them set up. I have two pieces of plexiglass over it to cover it. So it is, two maps, not one like AeroCore. And we're also zoomed out a little bit more in terms of scale. So like the hexes are smaller than the hexes in in AeroCore, even if a hex maybe covers close to the same amount of terrain. So the counters are smaller than AeroCore. The hexes are smaller. We've got a bigger map, a lot more maneuvering space, but channeled through some of these major road lines. And that's what we're going to be dealing with. So at the beginning of all of this, just to show very quickly, the Americans start off with the Stark Task Force kind of hanging around down here. Not much to do there, just hanging. And then they've got some engineer units in Kasserine itself. And then over on the eastern part of the map, where we're really going to see the most action initially, we have the Combat Command C in the northern part here, situated. Let's see, what's the town here? It is Hajeb Alayon. I'm probably butchering that pronunciation. Like I do, I'm also including the two counters that come with brazen chariots that can be added to the game. So I did add them. And then further south, we have the CCA here, Combat Command A. that are set up kind of on these ridges, as well as City Bao Zid. I'm absolutely butchering that pronunciation, I'm sure. So you can see there's a scattering of American forces here holding the terrain, holding the spaces, holding the major junctions of roads and trails and all that good stuff. And following after them here, or approaching their position, will be the Germans. And so we have a formation here, we have a formation here. I may be able to swap these. They come in an entry point F. So this whole category here, set of hexes here and then here. I could have them both come in. I think I want them, each one's going to have a different job to do. So they're coming down here, and then there'll be some additional forces that are going to come in at G. So this span of hexes here, two formations of Germans as well, armored formations, and they're going to be coming from the south effectively. And then the one really special thing with this campaign is talking about like how to win. You see, I've got colored bingo chits scattered about the board. There's a particularly interesting special rule here where the Germans don't really know where they're going to intend to go until over halfway through the campaign. So when we get to the 19th of February, which is not for 4, 5, 6 turns, you get to February 19th, you have to randomly draw a chit, and it tells you what your objective is, your true objective. And so, scattered across the map, there are victory hexes. There's an auto victory condition where you're going to get all your armored units through a particular hex, depending on which chit you draw. That indicates your ultimate objective, but victory points are going to be important along the way no matter what. So, the way it works is you're going to draw a chit, and it's either going to say La Kef or it's going to say Tabessa on it. And while those locations are not necessarily on map, if you're familiar with OCS Tunisia 2, you have a pretty good idea where those guys are at, or if you just know geography, you know where those things are at. But that's going to dictate your progression, either west or more due north. So if I pull La Kef rather, the blue bingo chits are victory point hexes, and there are 5. There's 4 you can see there, and then there's a 5th one underneath the Americans over here. The green ones, which you can see there are several, kind of taking you through the middle of the map and then in an arc right down through the middle between the two sets of colors here, to the northwest. Those are victory point hexes no matter which you take. So we know right now, even as the Germans not having pulled that shit, we should work in that general northwestern direction. If we grab those victory hexes, it's good either way. But we're going to kind of maybe have to hold somewhere in the middle until we get clear orders from the command on which way we need to go, because of course the Tabessa victory point hexes are the red bingo chits here on the furthest west. So generally speaking, at the early phase of the campaign, the Germans, we're going to come onto the board, we're going to fight the Americans, try to do as much damage or disrupt them as best we can, and begin consolidating control of the major roads and trails so that we can be able to pivot well whichever direction we think we're going to need to take. So it's going to be kind of a tricky situation, but again, we can move in a northwestern or western trajectory, and then as our orders become clear, we will then focus on that. So there's certainly some things we can look to be able to do and operate well. We'll also have Rommel join around that time. So Rommel will provide some snafu bonuses to German activations based on which subset of formations he's coordinating. So we'll see that eventually. And the Americans likewise will be getting their own reinforcements on the board over time, and they're just going to do their best to contest the German advance, the desire of the Germans to disrupt the Allied operations in Tunisia. You could certainly pull out your OCS maps and kind of see where this is at. I would almost want to do that. Maybe I will do that here in a second, just to kind of show, like in relation to the rest of the broader North African campaign, where this is focused. We have really 10 days, a good chunk of February to do this. What's funny is I'm starting this campaign very close to when it started, right? First turns February 14th. We're a couple of days ahead of that. So kind of fun. I guess I could have played this and done this as a like play one turn every day in real time, but I think I can move faster than that and get through the game faster than that. We'll see. Um, so yeah, so we're largely set up. I have already rolled the air points. So on the first turn, the weather is no rain. So those are the two weather conditions: rain or no rain. If it's rain, you just tend to have less capability for uh, air points. You don't get air points, and that's most of the impact. There are some movement point costs in the rain, but it starts with no rain, so we're all clear there. I did roll for air points. The allies roll a die and take a -2, but I rolled a 6, so they got 4 air points. The Germans got 4 air points on the die. So 4 and 4 air points for each side at the beginning, and that's it. So the reinforcements are these German units that are coming onto the board, and then the rest of the reinforcements will come on. So really a nice straightforward setup here. I do like the uncertain command of the axis of what direction do we need to go. We don't know, so we're just going to have to play well in the meantime, and I think that's a really interesting position to be in. Like, yes, advance against the enemy, but where are we going? We don't know yet. Okay, well, we're just going to have to be cautious and do what we can. That's an interesting bit to it. There's a couple of other things we need to keep in mind. So the Americans can't put support units in support. So if they have AV units, that would be great to have in support, meaning not a real unit on map on our little HQ cards, which I have the HQ cards for this game, like I do for AeroCorps. Uh, the Americans can't do it. They haven't. Their doctrine hasn't developed enough to include the sort of combined arms cohesion that having a unit in support indicates. So we've got some tank destroyers, but they're just kind of sitting out. They're going to have to sit on top of units and just hope for the best to keep shock attacks from occurring. That's kind of the best thing that they can do. There's also some impacts to some errata to the 2.0 rules. I am using, I should point out, the 2.0 charts and rules. This game came out when the rules were 1.1, but I will be using 2.0. There is some errata that's like limited AV can't cause a step loss on red AV or something. I have to double check that. That's really, I don't know if I like that or not. I mean, I guess it makes sense to a certain degree, but it also means like, there's no reason there's just gives so much more power behind the existing AV to just attack no matter what because they don't need to worry about being lost. Then what's the point of having limited AV anyway? You know, I guess the purpose is to keep shock attacks from happening. But boy, it feels like that nerfs tank destroyers up to a great degree when they're limited. There's certainly units that are like that. Show one somewhere here. This is not a particularly strong unit, right? One AV value, two action rating, pretty weak, all things considered. And if it can't deal any damage at all, I mean, he's really kind of a sitting duck for what it's worth. Which I mean, that might be accurate, but still a bummer. All right, let me take a look at a couple other things here since this is just the introductory video for the campaign. Okay, so I had to grab my Tunisia map just to help kind of show how things relate. And of course, the Kasserine area is split between the two maps, and I didn't want to get both maps out. But you can see, like, this is, here's Kasserine, here's the surrounding area, which when we look at, like, where is the baptism by fire maps, where do they kind of end out? Well, it's kind of right through here, up and around is basically the way that it's covered. So there's a little bit again. I'd show the other Tunisia map, but it's going to be unwieldy here. But this is the area that we're operating in, right? So if you like, I'd zoom out a little bit. The big OCS Tunisia game, certainly much more zoomed out. We zoom into this region, more or less here. And you can see the two main roads going out this way. Well, that is equivalent to these roads here. So you see the Speidla. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. I'm terrible at that. Kasserine is there. You can see just, it goes a little bit further south than what I could show without getting out the other OCS map, and on northwest through those ranges, which again are basically, through here that you can see. And so when we talk about, what are the victory hexes, if we go to Tebessa, right, and we try to get the victory points that are over this direction, um, what that's really doing is sending us out over all the way out to here, right? It's not portrayed on the baptism by fire map, but we're headed essentially west to get to Tebessa as one potential victory, and the other is coming up to. Oh gosh, am I gonna not be able to find it? Uh, oh gosh, it scared me right in the face. There it is. Look F. So the assumption that we're gonna kind of head up, up this road. That's where the other victory point hexes are, heading up this road to get up to a calf where that primary road has a junction there with the road that we've been looking at there. So that's in terms of the context, right? Of if you were looking at this, if you're playing OCS, this stuff might look a little different, but you can see, we're really fighting in this region here, trying to get either out to Tebessa or up to Lakef, and everything's going to be happening in that area here. So just kind of neat to see that comparison. Just what are we looking at? What are we dealing with? Where are we trying to get to? What's the strategic implications of this campaign across the 10 turns as we get going? Before we wrap up this video as the introduction, I do want to mention about some of the optional rules. I do want to use the standoff AV optional rule that's in, I think it's like section 6 of the 2.0 rulebook. I'm also torn about soft jumping HQ. So when we played Panzer's Last Stand at the convention recently, we played that any jumping of trains or HQs is always a hard jump, with the soft jump, being an optional rule or whatever. And we went with the hard jumps, and that tended to feel more impactful. Like the whole reason to try to disrupt enemies' command and control is with the hard jumping. And with the soft jumping, which is how I played Aerocore, it was like you almost never really jumped anybody. It was really hard to actually get a hard jump. And maybe in Aerocore, it makes more sense to do the soft because you don't have that many places to maneuver. Here, it just makes you wonder, like, gosh, you'd almost never bother to even try to jump because it's going to be a soft jump most of the time, and it's not really going to affect too much. So I'm kind of torn. I like hard jumping; it feels more impactful, but at the same time, I do think there's a totally valid thing to say. Well, it's the soft jumping's there because you don't really know that they're in that hex. Um, I'm really torn. It's hard to say if one's better than the other. Uh, as the Germans stomping on Soviet HQs, it felt a lot better to get the hard jumps every time. Here, who really has the better intel, right? The Americans or the Germans, the Allies or the Axis, and would it be uh, reasonable to say, due to the terrain, you can more easily spot the HQs? But I don't know. I mean, I've read accounts where American forces like happened upon an airbase of Germans where they had a bunch of planes out in the desert, and like they just sort of stumbled upon them. So sometime during the North African campaign or part of either Torch or the Tunisia operations. So I don't know. I'm stuck. I'm torn about what makes the most sense to tackle from an optional rule perspective. I really am stuck. And I'm not using orders. I just don't see the value in trying to add orders to the game as a solitaire exercise. This is one more extra thing to have to worry about, and I don't really want to have to do that. So that's the one thing I am stuck on right now. Is that, do I do the soft jumps or not? Um, because soft jump is optional, and I've sort of treated it, in some ways in my head, I'm like, oh, of course, you would play with soft jumps. I think I'm going to play without soft jumps. Every jump will be hard. I have to make a decision on this, and so it goes. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do hard. A jump is a hard jump, and all that comes with that, for however good or bad. And it's going to put, what I think is going to be really important, because look how much maneuvering space both sides have. There's just a lot. This would be, I mean, I could see where if it's just too easy to jump on your opponent, why you would want to do soft jumps. So maybe what I'll do is I'll play the first few turns with hard jumping. If it feels like it's too easy to jump on HQs and trains due to the terrain, we'll switch to soft jumping. You probably wouldn't want to switch in the middle of an opposed game because you want to play consistently. But I'm the master of my table as a solitaire gamer here for this campaign. I'll feel it out from there. Um, so no big deal on that, I guess. We'll see how it goes, and I'll certainly provide the commentary over how that goes. The other important thing I should point out, just as more of a historical reference kind of thing, this game included screening in the game series rules. They introduced screening, the ability to put units into a screen formation, which this guy is, which is useful, which is what you kind of needed in this game to slow down the enemy so they can't make use of all this open terrain. And actually leveraging screens is really important, I think, to this campaign. So it's sort of like, if you're dealing with hard jumps, how do you prevent a hard jump? Well, make sure you're screening your HQ. So we really have to pay attention to the screening rules. We use those a little bit in AeroCorps, and they were very useful in Panzer's Last Stand and in particular situations. So I think I need to remind myself to use the screens. Screening has since become a game standard, like a series standard rule, and they include the screening rules in the 2.0 rule book. But I think this was the first game where they introduced it, the second game in the series, as a way to modulate, all this open terrain and all the craziness here. So there you go, guys. Anyway, in the next video, we will start the campaign proper with turn one. I think what I'm going to do, this is one of those tough things. I feel like I'm so much better at BCS now that I could reasonably show you guys more footage on a turn-to-turn basis. And so what I may do is, because I'm not going to be, humming a lot or being confused by the rules as much, I may show things in more detail for turn one, but shortly thereafter, at least with turn two and beyond, it'll be the more abbreviated format where I do these videos where I'm going to be showing the aftermath of activations. I'm not going to show every counter movement. It's just too slow to do it that way. I'd never get done recording if I did it that way, and the videos would be much too long. So we'll look at some possible in-depth footage of the counter movements on the turn one video before we'll shift gears to more abbreviated format. And lastly, I will not be playing with chit pull, or randomizing. So that is an option. People do like it. I think it probably would be very good. But I'm going to go each side takes turns taking activations, because that's just I don't know. If I did chit pull, and chit pull is great for solitaire, right? I mean, that's what I'm used to using chit pull with. It would ordinarily be very good, but I feel like I prefer the chess match of, okay, I need to respond to what you just did to the best that I can. I prefer that, at least for the time being. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll change my mind. Maybe midway through the campaign we'll switch to chit pull, but we're going to go with each side taking an activation. That way, it's just a little more regimented as we play through the campaign to see what happens, um, and we'll work with that. And if you have thoughts about hard jumping and chit pull versus not chit pull, Panzer's Last Stand has its own activation methodology for that game specific game, that for the game specific rules. So that's kind of its own thing. But for like AeroCorps in this game, you kind of have to pick what you want to do. I'm just going to do the really basic stuff here. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Hope this is informative for the campaign playthrough to come. We'll see you in the turn one video. Take care. Keep gaming.